I wanted to talk promoter wars in the UK. I've had a few emails over the past couple of months saying, how do you see the Eddie Hearn versus Frank Warren thing going? Eddie Hearn's had a few difficulties, fighters getting injured, bills getting cancelled, super fights not getting made, no Khan Brook, no Carl Frotz, no Quig Frampton. Frank Warren's been doing some decent things. He himself, he's had a few setbacks recently. Doesn't look like Fury Klitschko is happening in the UK. Doesn't look like Saunders Eubank, the massive rematch is happening. And, question was, who do I think's got the momentum right now? Look, it's a broad question, it's an ongoing debate, but one thing I wanted to talk about on either side, I wanted to talk about Frank Warren getting Frank Buglioni a title shot against Chudinov, and I wanted to talk about Eddie Hearn, Coyle versus Luke Campbell. Now, let's start with Eddie Hearn. Let's start with Tommy Coyle versus Luke Campbell. Now, thank the Lord, it appears that this isn't a pay-per-view event. Had this been a pay-per-view event, this video would be taking a very different structure and different tone. That won't come as a surprise. And unless I'm hearing wrong, it's not going to be pay-per-view. If I'm wrong on that, please comment below. I'll have to film another video, which I will do. But Tommy Coyle versus Luke Campbell is a fight that I am really not excited about. Really not excited about. And the way Eddie Hearn's tried to promote this fight, in my eyes, is seemingly bizarre. These two guys should not be promoted on a bad blood route. I mean, neither of them seem to have very strong personalities. There clearly isn't much dislike between them. We've seen them fighting on the same bills, shaking hands, being matey. And now, all of a sudden, Eddie Hearn's, saying to Coogan on IFL TV, oh, don't think the bad blood between these two is put on. They really don't like each other. That's absolute nonsense. I mean, I understand that you're talking about two guys who aren't overly glamorous operators, who don't have big personalities, and you're trying to find a way of promoting and hyping an event. But for me, this is an event with two guys who are non-personalities, and trying to make them have bad blood almost highlights how how little personality they have. The interviews they did on IFL TV were almost cringeworthy in my eyes, sort of trying to hype up some bad blood thing. I mean, in terms of the fight itself, for me, this is a domestic level clash. I mean, Tommy Coyle, yes, he's a warrior. Yes, he is involved in entertaining fights from time to time. But let's be honest, this guy is woefully limited. Woefully limited. And this guy is nowhere near top class. And not only is he not nowhere near top class now, it's also evident that he doesn't have the capability or the upside to ever get to that platform. That's just my opinion, no disrespect to the guy. I'm sure he's a nice guy, he's a decent fighter, but he is not a top level operator. We've seen that time and time again in the ring, and even his recent winning performances, you've seen him dropped, you've seen him hurt, you've seen him outboxed at times, and he's going up against Luke Campbell, who is an Olympic gold medalist, unproven in terms of what he's done in the ring, unproven of the type of opposition he's been in with, and still quite a way off the world level because of the calibre of opponent he's been fighting. For me, this fight is of a similar standard to Anthony Joshua, Kevin Johnson. The gulf in, the gulf between the two is really vast. I know I got the Anthony Joshua, Kevin Johnson thing wrong, so I'm talking from maybe the perspective of hindsight here. But Tommy Coyle will be totally outclassed by Luke Campbell. I mean, I don't think there's anyone here, and if I'm wrong, again, please comment. I'm interested to discuss, but I don't think there's anybody who will be picking Tommy Coyle for this fight. I mean, he doesn't carry a huge amount of power at the elite level. A really well-honed amateur technician will be able to defend against his rather obvious attacks, and he can be just outboxed and outmoved so easily. Luke Campbell, there's questions over him at the elite level. We haven't seen enough proof so far. His career hasn't had the same momentum as the likes of an Anthony Joshua or a Callum Smith, but clearly he's got class, he's got pedigree, and for me, he's got way too much for Tommy Coyle. So, for me, this is an uncompetitive fight. It's being hyped beyond belief. The bad blood is awkward and unnecessary, and I just am really, really unmotivated by these fights. Sometimes Eddie Hearn, I know what he's trying to do, build boxing in certain cities, but what that creates is fighters like Josh Warrington and Tommy Coyle, who are so irrelevant in terms of the nationwide boxing fan. But they sell tickets in a certain venue, and that's obviously the business model he's operating behind. But it's a bad place for Sky Sports if it's Frankie Gavin one week, Josh Warrington the next week, Tommy Coyle. We need to see some stars who can kind of cross over outside of their cities. People like George Groves. I mean, George Groves isn't just a London fighter, for example. I know he's a bigger name, but Anthony Joshua, George Groves. You know what I'm getting at here. Anyway, so I've slagged off Eddie Hearn for a few minutes. Time to praise Mr. Warren. A real shrewd bit of business for Frank Warren, and he's done what he says he's going to do. He's put a few quid up. He's bought in a new champion, and funnily enough, it's a really shrewd gamble from him. Really shrewd, and I'll tell you why. Because Frank Buglioni, right, is well behind the likes of Paul Smith, Callum Smith, Rocky Fielding in terms of the ratings, not just in terms of BoxRec or in terms of the governing body's rating. But I'm talking about you and I, the boxing fan. I mean, if you had to draw your top 20 super middleweights, right, or your top 30 super middleweights globally, you wouldn't include Frank Buglioni, surely. But you'd be having, how many British fighters would you have above him? I mean, just the obvious ones: Frotz, De Gale, Groves, Callum Smith, Paul Smith, Rocky Fielding. He's quite a long way down, even in the sort of domestic scene. He's a limited fighter. I think his trainer, Pascal Collins, shows some of the most awful corner work I've ever seen. Frank Buglioni, he's one of the most deluded fighters I've ever seen, where he thinks he's this boxing technician with superb defensive skills. But he is what he is. He's a sort of maybe British level kind of guy, carries a bit of power, he's big at the weight, fundamentally probably not got the technical refinement, not got the defence, and not got the class to make it a top level. So what Frank Warren's done is, seen that. He's seen him, drop a loss to Kamitsky. He's seen him hit a draw to Lee Markham, and he's thought, rather than have this guy exposed at British level, let's take a gamble. And he's brought in Fedor Chudinov, who's an inexperienced guy, and he's coming off a good win against Felix Sturm, but Sturm's old, and Sturm isn't a super middleweight in my eyes. So how strong that form is questionable. It looks very good on paper, but is it actually world class form? That's kind of hard to predict in my eyes. So for me, it's shrewd from Frank Warren. He's got a guy who's only got one loss on his record, but his upside seemed to be limited, and he's bringing in an inexperienced guy, making him fight in front of Buglioni's home crowd, and Buglioni does draw quite a big home crowd. He's got very vocal support, and who knows? I mean, you're talking about a division here with world champions like James De Gale, Carl Frotz, Andre Ward. We're talking about a real high calibre of opposition, and wouldn't it throw the cat amongst the pigeons if Frank Buglioni was added to that list? And the thing about Buglioni is he's got a puncher's chance. He's fighting at home. He hits hard enough. This is an achievable look. Chudinov's a huge favourite, and I'd pick Chudinov to win at this early stage. But you don't rule Buglioni out of this fight. I mean, Chudinov's not shown me anything to suggest that Buglioni couldn't have some success, and maybe couldn't get the job done. As I said, I'd pick Chudinov, but it's not as crazy as Buglioni Ward or Buglioni De Gale. Perhaps Frank's got a chance of having some success in this fight, and who knows where that leads him. We've got Badu Jack, George Groves, you've got James De Gale. There's all these names in the hat at present. Maybe Arthur Abraham, and potentially you go from dropping a draw to Lee Markham to being involved in a super fight. So fair play to Frank Warren. It's the best thing for him and his fighter. Yeah, I don't think Frank Buglioni is the kind of guy you wanted to have maybe 10 easy fights with and try and build him up, because I think the risk of him losing was too high, as we saw against Kamitsky and as we saw against Markham. And for Frank Warren, for PR reasons, wouldn't it be amazing for him if he's got a super middleweight world champion and Callum Smith, Rocky Fielding are still some way off that level? That's just my thoughts. A good week for Frank Warren in my eyes. Interesting to discuss. I'm interested to discuss Coyle Campbell. I'm interested to discuss Hearn Warren, and I'm interested to discuss Buglioni Chudinov. Let me know your thoughts. As always, thanks for watching.